The MedStar Hope was one of Earth's most respected hospital ships, known across the galaxy for its humanitarian missions. It carried no weapons, no soldiers, only doctors, nurses, and medics who worked tirelessly to save lives, regardless of species. The ship's white hull glowed softly in the darkness of space, marked with a bright red cross, a universal symbol of neutrality protected under galactic law. No faction, no empire, no military had ever dared attack a hospital ship. But that day, everything changed. The MedStar Hope had just completed evacuating wounded civilians from a war-torn colony in the neutral zone. Its medical bays were overflowing. Some patients were human, others alien, all receiving the same care. The crew believed they were safe. The ship was in open space beyond any battle lines, its distress beacon broadcasting its neutral status. Then, without warning, alarms blared across the ship. "Unidentified ships approaching fast," a crew member shouted, voice trembling. On the main screen, a fleet of black warships emerged, moving in perfect formation, weapons charged and locked onto the hospital ship. There was no hail, no warning, no demands, only death approaching. Captain Elias Munro, a veteran of decades of medical relief missions, rose from his chair, his heart pounding. "Broadcast our identification codes on all frequencies," he ordered. "Remind them we are a hospital ship, unarmed, protected under galactic law." The communications officer obeyed, sending the message in every known language. The ship's signal flared brightly, its white hull unmistakable. Yet the enemy's ships did not slow. The first shot struck. A plasma beam tore through the hull. The MedStar Hope shuddered violently, sirens screaming. Red warning lights flashed across the bridge as damage reports poured in. They hit the engine. "Bay!" an officer screamed. Munro's knuckles turned white against the armrests of his chair. "This is a mistake," he whispered. They couldn't attack a medical vessel." Then came the second shot, the third. Panels exploded, sparks rained from the ceiling. Fire spread through the lower decks. In the medical bay, doctors and nurses shielded patients, desperately trying to stabilize the critically wounded. "Send a distress signal," Munro commanded. "Someone out there will stop this." The distress beacon pulsed into space, bouncing across relays, reaching trade routes and military outposts. No response. "They're jamming us," the communications officer whispered, horror creeping into his voice. Then came the worst nightmare. The enemy ships launched boarding pods, sharp, spear-like vessels that stabbed into the MedStar Hope's weakened hull. Armed soldiers poured in, their armor gleaming under the emergency lights. They did not speak. They did not hesitate. They opened fire. Doctors and nurses, unarmed and defenseless, were gunned down where they stood. Patients, too weak to move, were executed in their beds. No one was spared. Munro watched the security feeds in horror, his crew being slaughtered by soldiers with no mercy. Blood pooled across the medical bays, screams echoing through the ship's corridors. "Someone has to stop this," he muttered. The communications officer, bleeding from a cut on his forehead, managed to reroute power to a secondary transmitter. "We have enough energy for one last transmission," he gasped. Munro did not hesitate. "This is the MedStar Hope. We are under attack. Hospital ship, neutral vessel, being slaughtered. If anyone can hear this, Earth must know. Tell them." A final explosion rocked the ship. The message cut off. The MedStar Hope was gone. Deep within Earth's Solar Defense Command, Admiral Marcus Steele sat at the heart of the most powerful military force humanity had ever assembled. He had prepared for war his entire life, managing fleets, securing alliances, but nothing could have prepared him for the message that arrived that day. It was only 12 seconds long. 12 seconds of static, of desperate voices, of terror. This is the MedStar Hope. We are under attack. Hospital ship, neutral vessel, being slaughtered. If anyone can hear this, Earth must know. Tell them. Then silence. Steele listened to it again and again. The signal had taken hours to reach them, bouncing across outposts, relays, and passing ships. By the time it arrived, it was already too late. The MedStar Hope was gone. Steele's gaze hardened as he turned toward the massive holomap in front of him, displaying military movements across the galaxy. He had seen countless skirmishes between warring factions, pirate raids, and territorial disputes. But this was different. A hospital ship, a purely medical vessel, hunted down, destroyed. Who did this? Steele growled. The intelligence officer hesitated. The energy signatures match a faction we've had little contact with, the Zaruri Dominion. Steele's jaw clenched. The Zaruri were powerful, militaristic, and ruthless in conquest, but never, in all of recorded history, had they attacked a hospital ship. Are we certain? 100%, Steele exhaled sharply. He had seen battles. He had witnessed atrocities. But this wasn't war, he said coldly. This was a massacre. The war room fell silent. Officers, strategists, and fleet commanders exchanged uneasy glances. They knew what this meant. It was an act of war. Steele turned to his second-in-command, Vice Admiral Sarah Caldwell. "Prepare. The fleet." Caldwell nodded without hesitation. "How many ships?" Steele's eyes darkened. All of them. Across the vastness of space, the war drums of humanity began to beat. Warships that had rested in silent readiness now roared to life. Engines burned bright. Fleets mobilized. The Zaruri Dominion had made a fatal mistake. They thought humanity was weak. They thought Earth would stay silent. They were wrong. The largest fleet in human history surged forward, an armada of 3,000 warships, 10,000 fighter squadrons, and enough firepower to erase an empire. When the human fleet arrived, the Zaruri homeworld trembled. Their warships scrambled, their defenses activated, admirals barked orders. The once mighty conquerors of the stars were panicking. Inside the Zaruri command station, High Admiral Zel Varen stared at the battlefield. Thousands of human ships, a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. This isn't possible. One of his officers stammered. The humans had come for vengeance, and they would not stop. A transmission crackled across the Zaruri Dominion. Admiral Steele's voice rang clear, unforgiving. "You have committed an act of war against the human race. You have murdered civilians. You have crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed. You have one chance: surrender or be erased." The reply came, defiant and hissing. "You are insects," the Zaruri High Admiral sneered. "You will be crushed." Steele's eyes hardened. So be it. The sky ignited. Earth's warships roared forward, railguns, plasma cannons, missile salvos, an unstoppable storm of destruction. Zaruri warships exploded in chain reactions, their fleet torn apart. The once mighty Dominion crumbled. The survivors begged for surrender. Humanity stood victorious. The message echoed across the stars. The Zaruri Dominion, built on war and conquest, had been broken, and Earth, once underestimated, had just rewritten galactic history. No empire, no warlord, no tyrant would ever dare challenge humanity again.